Welcome back to the latest episode of Taking Charge of My Cancer podcast, and I have a very special guest today, Candice Brown-Bishop. She was born in Atlanta, Georgia, lived mostly in Live Oak, Florida. She graduated from the Suwannee High School and moved to Gainesville in 1997, attended Santa Fe College, and have been employed at UF Health for 22 years. Currently the research billing and ops manager. She's married 19 years and have a blended family consisting of her two biological children, four stepdaughters, four step-grandchildren, her family dog, Aki, and a family cat, Lavender. She enjoys working out, running half marathons, hiking, planting, traveling, and bringing positive energy to relationships and situations she engaged in. Diagnosed initially with a stage 0 non-invasive ductal carcinoma in situ. After partial mastectomy, the pathology confirmed that she actually has a stage 1A invasive breast cancer. She had a re-excision and a sentinel lymph node biopsy was performed, and then have to go through 20 sessions of radiation therapy. Complete her third year of survivorship, and then was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2023. So Candice, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to just share about myself and my journey with breast cancer.
Excellent. So Candice and I went back since we have a surveillance program, she came here after her initial diagnosis, because usually with our prospective surveillance program, we see patients pre-op. So most of our breast cancer surgeons refer the patients right away after the diagnosis. So they end up seeing the surgeon and then see us pretty much right away, for us to do a pre-op baseline measurements just to really be able to identify early onset of lymphedema. So that's how we met. And here is the journey together for the last 3 years. So again, you are so empowered, and I love your personality and your energy, and you're such a strong woman that's kind of like really like I feel like people needs to hear your story, because you're gonna kind of really empower them as much and try to take this journey part of the way you took it. So you want to tell us a little bit about your role and what you're always planning in doing, what you do now for work?
So as a research billing and operational manager, my job is basically to promote an atmosphere of compliance surrounding research billing compliance. When we participate in research as an institution, there are some risks that come along with that because we're receiving funds from sponsors and sometimes federal dollars for patient services. And so we have to be sure that we do not bill the patients for things that we've promised for free. So my job is kind of just ensuring that our research study teams are supported in the revenue cycle processes and ensure that they understand billing compliance rules. And so I give a lot of guidance and education to our researchers. And I feel that my role at UF Health in terms of supporting patient care is very important because I'm helping to move the mission of research forward. And that's very important, especially for people who are diagnosed with cancer.
Okay, perfect. Um, how your story a little bit. Let's go back into how did you find your cancer?
I actually went through a period during COVID. I forgot to have my mammogram. I have been in research for over 14 years, so I understand the importance of screening and so, making sure that you get screened for certain types of cancers. And they have a whole, as you know, there's screening criteria and guidelines for different cancers. And so once I turned 40, I started to become eligible to be screened for breast cancer. During COVID, it was just a crazy time, so I didn't have my mammogram. And it kind of hit me in 2021 like, hey, you haven't had your mammogram. You need to get your mammogram. And I went in for just a normal screening mammography, and I was told that I had some abnormal findings. And that kind of started the road to being diagnosed with breast cancer. I would encourage all women listening to this podcast or seeing this podcast to take the time to go get screened. It's sometimes we get busy in life and with kids and family and work and husbands. and just trying to keep all of those aspects of our life moving forward, is we sometimes neglect to take care of ourselves. And so that's a very important part of my message today, is that take time to get your screenings, go have your annual exam with your PCP, talk about how you feel, do your self-examinations, just invest in making sure that if there is something going on, that you'll be able to identify it quickly.
That's perfect. So, based on your story and what you have been learning through 3 years of your journey, what will be three, like a couple of valuable tips for patients who are been going through breast cancer, or even patients in
Uh,
general that are going through a cancer journey, you know?
I would say anyone facing cancer or any type of chronic illness, the first thing I would say is always control what you can control. There are going to be things along your journey that you can control: your diet, your exercise and activity, your mental status and mental state. Those are things that you can control. So the first thing that you have to do is empower yourself to be in control, make a decision about what outcomes you want, and then do the research to figure out what do I need to do for those outcomes, and just commit to being in control of making decisions about the outcome that you want. It's very important to commit yourself to saying, like, hey, I want to be cancer free. What do I do to become cancer free? And everything that you can control: diet, exercise, activity, taking your medications that have been prescribed, being positive, anything that you can control, take control of that, and be in charge. Your investment in your fight to be healthy is what's going to really control your outcomes. Focus on your care. Stay present in the now. Make sure you understand your treatment plan. If you don't understand, ask questions, and just make sure that your mind will sometimes, when you're going through these types of medical events, your mind will sometimes start to race and make you wonder all of these different outcomes and variables. And that's when I say stay present in now. You don't know what the future is going to hold. So you have to stay present in today and do the things today that you want to make sure that it aligns with the outcomes that you want. And then just staying active and continue to live your life and make memories. Don't get bogged down in your diagnosis. It'll become very easily, but make time for date night with your husband and movie night with your family, and continue to try to have somewhat of the most normal interactions with the people around you as you can. Obviously, you have to focus on your diagnosis, but don't let that be the only thing that you're focused on. Make sure to continue to live. Make sure to continue to make memories. I think that was very important for me. And the last thing I would say would be to rely on your support system. So when you're going through this, you're going to need support emotionally, sometimes physically, especially after you've had surgeries. You're going to need people to do things for you. So put your pride aside. Don't let your ego get in the way. Don't think you have to be superwoman and figure your way through all of this alone. Really, like, depend upon your support system.
Yes, that's well say. It's hard for us when we are so independent and when we just so self, it's hard for us to ask for help, right? And admit it that we cannot do it alone. So just really, like you say before, I
Yeah,
love, like, don't have the pride, at that point, just have the family help. Just, you need that. That's good for your mental health. Sometimes we feel that we
yeah.
can do it all, and that is why, family is there for and friends are there for. So that's important. How about a painful lesson that you learn along the way?
Um, I think the painful lesson for me was just not being prepared to just to be patient. Um, when you go through the process of being diagnosed and treated for breast cancer, it's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of things that are kind of out of your timeline control. So, as you know, you go in, you get a biopsy, you got to wait on results. You get imaging, you kind of got to wait on somebody to send you results. You get pathology, you kind of got to wait on somebody to send you those results. Sometimes those results impact what's going to happen next. So some of your idea of, like, okay, well, I know I have this cancer in me, I got to have surgery, but there are going to be so many steps along the way. You don't just go from you have cancer to surgery. And so I wasn't really prepared. And that kind of in the first beginning, that was one of the things that I really had to adjust to was like, hey, this isn't on my timeline. And just trying to making sure to control my anxiety about the results and how your mind again will sometimes race because obviously it's a situation where you don't really know until you know. And so I wasn't necessarily prepared for everybody else's timeline. I kind of had in my own mind, like, okay, I know I have cancer. I did my research. Like, I'm ready to go. And everything kind of is scheduled and you got to wait. So, that I would say that was my most painful lesson is that it wasn't in my control. And sometimes things happen in your life that you just can't control. You can't control when you go to the OR. You can't control when pathology sends those results. So I wasn't really prepared for that part of it. So I will share that part about my journey is that be prepared to be patient and be prepared to withstand the pressures that come along with having to wait and kind of be in limbo about certain things. I think the biggest one for me was the oncotype testing, which kind of dictates if you have to have chemotherapy. And so it was just like I wanted to know today, like tell me today if I need chemo. And they're like, no, well, we can't really tell you today if you need chemo. So we're gonna go through this whole oncotype testing and then we'll get back to you. And I'm like, no, you just said I might need chemo. I want to know today. And so you have to be prepared to exercise patience and within that to exercise a hopeful and positive attitude because when again it's you're not on your own timeline so that automatically elevates that anxiety and fear. And so you have to be ready and be prepared to know like everything's not going to happen on your timeline. There are going to be some things that you think like, wow, this is taking a long time. And that's okay. Just again, focus on the things you can control.
Yep, yep, that's exactly right. And you're right, this oncotype test, which again, I'm so glad we are doing it, because we used to do like, everybody got chemo before. Now it's like not necessarily, right? So if your body's not gonna
Right. Yeah.
respond and that's not gonna change anything on how to treat cancer, why put you through all this toxicity if you don't need to? So that's a good thing we're doing this, but unfortunately, you're right, we're depending on the labs to do this and there's nothing we can speed up for that. But I can see the waiting time, stress is hard, right? It's hard when you have your
Yeah. And I
mammogram.
think when you Yeah, if you haven't really had cancer or had anybody who's close to you that has cancer, again, you don't know these expectations and timelines. And so again, just be prepared that there are going to be things that take a few weeks sometimes to get back results on. And you're going to have to be in limbo, you're going to have to be patient. And you're going to have to, exercise grace with your thoughts and keep yourself in control with that.
Correct. Yes. So what does it mean to advocate for yourself and how can people do that?
I think for me, advocating meant being a part of my treatment plan decisions. And so I think the biggest way to advocate for yourself is to be honest with your healthcare providers about how you feel physically, emotionally, and making sure that anything that they are presenting to you as a part of your care plan that you understand and that you actually buy into that's the right thing to do for you. I think that there's a lot of times where I had to ask questions more than once. If you, again, if they're telling you something and you don't understand completely, and and if that information you feel like is important for you to move forward with a decision, advocating for yourself is just asking those questions until you get the answer or the information in a way that answers the question that you have. Um, I think you have to know your options when it comes to advocating for yourself. So doing research in advance of saying like, again, committing yourself to your own fight, investing in your fight and saying like, okay, what are the things that are going to be made available to me? Kind of doing some research. And especially, I think when it comes to like surgery decisions, that's a big thing. So you kind of got to know, put all of these different pieces of information together. And sometimes it might not all make sense to you. And so just really for me, advocating for myself was asking the right questions, no matter how long it took with the doctor, You know, I'm gonna keep asking questions. We're gonna run this E&M all the way up to level 5 if we have to. But
Yeah.
I want to know what is going on. I have these questions. So I think it's very important to just again be present, um, ask the questions. And again, if something you think something doesn't align with what's best for you, speak up. That's advocating for yourself. If someone's saying like, "Hey, this is what we think is best for you," um, yes, they're doctors and they have all of the knowledge, but sometimes there's more than one way to treat certain things. And so, if you've done your research, then you can advocate for yourself and say, I don't think that's the best thing for me. And this is the other option that I want to discuss. And that kind of forces them to acknowledge what you think is best for you. And then you and your doctor can work together. And if what they think is the best and what you when you kind of bring those two ideas together, it allows you to have a dialogue. So even if what you've researched and you found and you think is best for you, if you can have that intelligent conversation with your doctor and say, hey, this is what I researched for myself, and I think this is what's best for me. If that's really not what's best for you, it kind of forces them to give you a little bit more of an explanation.
Mhm.
And then that explanation allows you to walk away feeling like you were a part of your decision. And I think advocating for myself was never like removing myself and just like showing up and someone saying, okay, well, this is what we're going to do for you. No, let's talk about it. You know, just being involved in that decision making.
Exactly. And feel good. Sometimes we have patients who we don't necessarily agree with their decisions, right? It's like, well, I don't think it's a
Yeah.
good decision. I think based on the research and based on what we see, this is best for you. But at the end of the day, is the patient decision, right? If you feel well with
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
decision, even if maybe it's not the best one from the medical standpoint, it's still your decision. And then, but again, make sure that your decision is based in good research, right? Sometimes we go to Dr. Google. That is not necessarily the best thing to go to because
Oh yeah.
you
Definitely
know
not going to Dr. Google. There's
exactly.
yeah, definitely don't go to Dr. Google.
Exactly, exactly. Make sure that you're gonna get really, truly information from good sources, right? That are medical, scientific based with
Yeah.
a
I
good.
think my go-to was the National Comprehensive Cancer Network. So already being in research, as a part of my job, we do what we call a coverage analysis. So we look at research clinical protocols and we identify things within the study protocol that are standard clinical care for patients with a certain type of cancer. So I was already familiar with going to the NCCN website and like looking up different cancers and looking at like what are the protocols, medical protocols followed to diagnose? What are the protocols followed to be for treatment? And obviously, there's a lot of different variations. So you kind of sometimes it takes you a little bit of time to go through all of the information that was available, but that was always kind of like my go-to. As soon as I found out I had breast cancer, that's the first website that I visited. You can create a account as a patient or caregiver, and you can go in and see all of the clinical protocols to diagnose and treat any form of cancer. There'll also be other information sometimes about clinical trials and outcomes on there. So just a lot of great information from, like you said, a strong community of doctors that are dedicated to sharing information about the treatment and diagnosis and treatment of cancer. So it was definitely one of my big places to go for information online. Definitely not Dr. Google. And you can pretty much, that information is things that are being used across like the world, really. So it's really good information.
Yeah, and you actually jump into that in next question that I was going to be what kind of resources would you advise patients to look into it? So the NCC guidelines is a great one, and that's what I will advise. Is anything else that you find that is a really helpful website or link for patients to go into?
I think I really mostly lean towards that. There were a few links for specific to breast cancer. I can't like think of them off the hand, but I did like use a few. I think it was like Susan G. Komen. Like I went to that website and looked at some information that they had available. But definitely mostly the only website that I used was the NCCN.
Okay, got you. Um, how your breast cancer impact your mental health and what resources do you use or what do you do to try to help you with that aspect going through this journey?
So mental health, I think, for all cancer patients and people living with chronic illness is something I don't think we talk about enough. Um, just kind of being diagnosed with breast cancer was like probably like the most heavy thing I ever went through in my life in terms of a medical diagnosis. And so from the time I think that I realized that I had an abnormal mammogram through today, I've had to focus on ways to keep my mental health in check. You're going to have a gamut of emotions. Fear is like a really big one, and anxiety
Mhm.
because again, when you hear the word cancer, a lot of people associate that word with death. And so it's very easy when you hear that for your mind to automatically think negative thoughts. But I do really believe that how you think and how you process impacts your outcomes. And so from the moment that I found out, I was like, okay, like I gotta do everything I can to stay positive and like if I'm committing myself to saying that I'm gonna fight cancer and I'm gonna win and I'm gonna live, I have to think that way all the time. And so mentally, I think also you don't think about it, but the people around you that love you the most, it impacts them mentally.
Mhm.
And so not only are you're going to have to face your own mental struggles, but you're also going to have to embrace the fact that your family's going to struggle. They're going to be afraid for you. Um, they are going to want to save you. So you're going to go through a lot of emotions and things with your family as well. So for me, the biggest thing that I did to help myself mentally was to acknowledge my feelings, all of my emotions, my anger, my fears, my resentment, my grief, my why me's.
Uh-huh.
I had to really kind of embrace all of those emotions and really like decipher what they meant in the moment and then just release them. Uh, and sometimes that meant for me, I'm a very big physical activity person. And so I've always used exercise for stress.
Yeah.
So I took so many runs during cancer. And even up until today, I still use exercise. I use journaling. I think that you have to also find people in your support system that are capable of listening. And that'll be great because sometimes you just need to talk. You just need to release what you're feeling. Sometimes you need to be validated. And so having someone with good communication skills, if you're fortunate to have someone in your family that's a counselor, great. They should become a part of your a direct support system. But if you don't, you probably have someone in your family that's an unofficial counselor. So go to that person and tell them your feelings, release your emotions, don't hold it all in. For me, it was a friend. We went to breakfast every Tuesday. I was able to tell her how I felt. Um, and it was a good release for me. And then, like I said, the exercising. But you definitely, if you can't figure out how to control it, sometimes you just have to talk to somebody that's a professional. So I think for me, that part came more in my survivorship stage because when I was actually going through cancer, I was just so focused on like, hey, what can I do to win? And so once I got through that part and I realized like how much my body had been through physically, That's kind of when I needed to talk to somebody professional, and then I started to go to counseling. So there's going to be some heavy things on your mind. Facing immortality is not easy, and you learn so many hard lessons through treatments. There are going to be times where you're tired. There are going to be times when you just want it to be over, and there's still more things that have to occur. And so you're definitely going to have those days that are not your best days during this journey. And so you got to have that support system. You got to have a way that you've identified that says, hey, like when I need to kind of just get it out, how do I get it out and have that available and use it? If
Yeah,
it's just go in the bathroom and in the shower and scream, just go in there and do it.
absolutely.
Whatever it is to get that emotional release, just do it. Don't make a barrier for yourself either. Sometimes I think I wanted to be strong. And so some days, like I was having a bad day, and I'm like, I don't want to tell anybody I'm having a bad day. And then I would think about it, it's okay. What you're going through,
Yeah,
you're supposed to have bad days. And so you have to kind of keep yourself in check again and know that it's okay to rely on your support system and to release your emotions freely to them. Um, and just really just kind of protecting your peace and your energy, making sure that again that you have a good support system, good people around you that are helping you to stay positive, helping you to stay upbeat, that are feeding you and helping you to manifest good energy because you'll need that.
absolutely. And you brought a really good point. We're going through the actual cancer journey regarding by the time of diagnosis to the time that you finish your treatments, right? And then it's like you're like focused so much into let me get better with either surgery or chemotherapy or radiation, and then you're done, and then you're like your doctors are like, okay, you can do a follow-up once a year, you're done, see you later, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, what do I do now? And so we try to improve from the medical standpoint, or healthcare provider, how can we improve or empower more that survivorship to continue giving the support, because I think that's when a lot of things go downhill, right? Because then you get
Yeah.
to that point and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm now in hormone blockers. Now I'm feeling all these effects. Now I'm feeling this. Now, how do I manage that? I don't have anybody
Uh,
that I can go to and say, I don't see my doctor anymore in a regular basis. Who is taking care of that? And that's what the moments that sometimes you really kind of struggle through this. So
yeah.
I think this is a part of the time that you gotta start to really looking into, like what you're saying, counseling. Don't feel afraid to, reach out to your physician. We have these conversations. I have the fortune to be able to see you guys in the first couple of years, every 3 months. So sometimes even with us, having that conversation, how are you feeling, what's happening, not just from the PTS standpoint, but what's happening with your life, how is that energy, how is everything going with us?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I wasn't also prepared for was, I don't think there's a lot of conversation about survivorship. And during my first like year and a half, like the lymphatic hoarding and the muscle restriction and just getting used to chronic pain, it was a lot to kind of go through. And like you said, um, your support system, not to say that they leave, but things do kind of go back to normal, life kind of gets back to life. And so you kind of have to kind of deal with some things kind of on your own. And so it's definitely once you get through radiation and chemo and all of those things. And now, you know, I'm so thankful for being able to go to PT and massage therapy and all of the things that I actually still do today because if I wasn't, the quality of life that I would have would be less
Mhm.
um and it would be more challenges. And because sometimes when I, especially like year 1 and 2, I used to think to myself, how do people get through this? Like, I had no clue how many struggles you have to face once everything is over, like once everything is over and you're still healing and you still have issues with this or that, and your skin changes from radiation and your hair doesn't isn't there anymore and it's not growing back and it's like so many things that you weren't necessarily thinking of because again, you're kind of just focused on that treatment plan in the beginning. And then once that treatment plan is over, it's like, oh, okay, so I need PT, I need massage therapy. And you got to kind of commit again to those things to kind of help yourself to be in the best place post-op, post-radiation, post-chemo. And you're already tired because you just went through so much
Yeah.
just to be able to say you survived. And now you have all of these new challenges to face. And like the hormone blockers, like, oh, I'm like counting down, like, come on, 5-year mark. I'm so ready to be off of those things. Um, because again, like I didn't I didn't know. Like I never had anybody that was close, really close to me that had breast cancer that kind of told me their whole journey that I was kind of there with them through it. So everything that I experienced, like this was something totally new, a total new road for me. So I didn't expect that, 3 years after that, I would still have so much
Yeah.
going on from just my treatments.
Yeah. Hanging in there, hanging in there. How can
Yeah.
people find you?
So on Instagram, I am under the call name of Kenya_beauty, and on Facebook, Candy K.
Perfect. And I will add that to the show notes so people can find you for any questions or any advice. Is any podcast or books that you would recommend?
So I think this is gonna sound cheesy, but it's the truth. My go-to book was actually the Bible. I think the Bible has some of the most historic and heroic stories that about just faith and hope. And so I really wanted to ground myself in my upbringing. So I've always kind of been brought up in a family that believes in God and Jesus Christ as our Savior, and that through prayer and supplication, we are able to ask a higher power to intervene on our behalf. And so the Bible was definitely my go-to, specifically the book of Job. That was one of my favorite books to read during my cancer journey because Job was a man that went through a lot of struggles, including some health struggles, and he kept his faith and he was rewarded. And so the book of Psalms and Proverbs, just because there's a lot of just good manifestations and affirmations and so many good blessings in those books, wisdom. And so I found peace in that. I also kind of just kept it light. Sometimes I would, read something that was funny, just to kind of get my mind off of things. So yeah, definitely the Bible and then something light, something that just make me laugh. You definitely got to find ways to laugh during your journey. So I would find something, I'd be like, let me find something funny and read it.
Got you. How about podcasts? Any?
Um, I didn't listen to any podcasts. I was one thing that I really wanted to do, and it was to kind of like not take on too much information about other people's journeys. And so what I found was a lot of podcasts had other people experiences. And I think like for me, just for me personally, I needed to not hear those things because it's easy to kind of think, oh, well, that could be me. And so I'm a very, oh, that could be me person. So I tried to keep myself away from those types of podcasts. Now, post breast cancer, now that I'm in survivorship, I do listen. I go online and I'm a part of some support groups that I actually, and I meant to write it down and I forgot to write it down. But when I went through one of my appointments at UF Health, they had a group that they were referring patients to. It was a support group, and that literally became, I actually might have,
Yeah, you
I
can
think
send
it
it
might
to me.
have been the
Yeah.
Lydia Project. I think it
Okay.
was the Lydia Project, but then it changed names. But I literally, right now, I have some of my favorite cards that I got from
Oh,
people.
That's really
But basically it was a great support group, but it was people who were dedicated to calling you and to sending you like a just a nice card every week and telling you like to stay positive and that God loves you. And so I really became a kind of like really connected and tuned into the Lydia Project. So that was one of my really big support groups while I was going through the diagnosis and treatment phases.
great. Is what is one question you wish I would have asked, and if you have answers to wrap up?
That question would have been, what did I learn about myself during this journey? And what I learned about myself was that in the face of tough moments, there is the ability for me to rise and to be resilient, and to rely upon the people that I love. And I also learned that even though cancer was like dark and there were a lot of days that I felt like I was, like, why is this happening to me? I also learned that there were good things that came as a result of that. And so that kind of sounds weird, but your connection with your family and the people that love you, it deepens. And you get to see a side of the humanity of the people that love you and want to take care of you that you wouldn't see if you hadn't been diagnosed. And I learned how many people love me. And it was humbling, and it was one of those experiences that I thought to myself, like, if I didn't have my family and, my close support system that I had, I wouldn't have made it through that. And it makes me really like intentional about making sure that I find places to insert myself for maybe people who don't have that support system that are going through breast
Definitely.
cancer,
That's right.
because it's so important to feel loved and to feel like you have a place that you can be vulnerable with people that will pick you up. And that is what I learned, is that I had that.
That's awesome. That's really nice. And I totally see. It's funny how when you came across when I met you the first time, it like looked like a very strong, like, I'm gonna get this thing no matter what. And at the same time, like you're so sensitive, right? Like it's funny how, well, not funny, but amazing how you think that you know someone, and then you just like, oh wow, surprise, look at you. And then again, I remember you like, no, I'm going to Orange Theory. I'm working. I mean, you're like a workout alcoholic, I want to say. And I identify
Yeah,
with you
yeah,
in that aspect
yeah.
as
I
well.
from the time that I got post-op and they were like, you can work out, I started working out. And then somebody told me about being active before my radiation. And then that just really sprung me because I'm like, okay, let's start back running. And I started taking like 1 mile runs before my radiation every day. And that kind of was like my first step back to really getting active. And I'm thankful and grateful because again, I think that when you have data and information that says, hey, people who are active have better results, I'm like, let me be active.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's so easy. And
Yeah.
that is so easy to sell to somebody who enjoy exercising, but definitely we'll see so much better outcomes and so much better management of the side effects when you really are improving your health and you improving your nutrition and you exercising. So all that together works really, really well. So we can talk here forever. I absolutely love all the information that you have been bringing. I think our audience will really enjoy. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you have a wonderful rest of the day and a happy weekend.
You too.
Okay, bye.